Hey, just a quick note to let you know that this video is a pre-recorded live event. If you'd like to join our upcoming events, such as demos and office hours, you can check out our schedule on our support page. Hope you find this video helpful and look forward to seeing you in our next event. All right. Thanks for those of you that can join this live demo today, and welcome to any of you watching this video at a later date. So today in today's live demo, I'm going to be going through using Power BI templates for ZooMonitor data. And so if you haven't had a chance to see my previous demo I gave an overview of the Power BI software. I'd recommend certainly starting there. Today I wasn't planning to dive too deeply into Power BI and the different architecture there. So that video is definitely a good complement to today. And so with today, what I'm talking about is template files in Power BI. And so basically these are files that you can use to bring your data from ZooMonitor into Power BI with just a few clicks, as you'll see, and then have a rich dashboard of your ZooMonitor exported data. So super exciting. It came out of actually some work for a manuscript I recently did for the journal Animals. And so with that manuscript, I really wanted to have a more accessible way people can get started with using Microsoft Power BI. It's a super valuable tool for us at Lincoln Park Zoo, and certainly others are using it as well. And so I hope these template files certainly kind of fill that gap and get people started. And these are provided completely, you can modify and just start with what the template file is and kind of run from that as well. As you start to learn more about Power BI, you can certainly modify it as needed for sure. So I mentioned the template files a few times, and what the template files are is basically it's a file that has the report visuals from Power BI. It has basically all the relationships. It has all the query steps. So basically how we calculate the metrics like percent of time and rate, all of that is in there. But the thing it doesn't have is the actual data that underlie all of the graphs and of course the dashboard. And so you would obviously be bringing in the data. And so let me go ahead here and start screen sharing, and I'll open up, first I should probably take a step back and share where you can find these template files. So if you go to our support page in ZooMonitor, in our resource library here, you can, under the template section here, you can download these report templates. And so we have the Power BI quarterly behavior report template here, and then the enrichment report template here. And these are the two templates I'm going to talk about today. This one obviously is going through more of a looking at your data on a quarterly basis, breaking it up like that. And then this one is looking specifically at a few enrichment related behaviors you could add to your project. And then I also provide some example data to help you get started. So you can look at the example data, see how it's formatted, and start with that as well. And then for the enrichment report, there's a few little extra steps there, and we'll get into that to use that report. And so I do have some instructions for that one. The quarterly behavior report is what I'll start with, and that's a little bit more straightforward here. Okay, so let me go ahead and open up here the quarterly behavior report template version 1.1. So this is the file that you can download from our resource library on our support page. And you'll see when it loads. So it's opening the file here. Okay, so you'll see the first thing it asks for is the file pathway. And that's, of course, what I was referencing earlier. The file here, the template file, does not have any of the data. So you'll need to bring that data in. And so what I'm going to do is use the example data set that is available also on the resource library there. And I'm going to show you how you can copy that in. So there are a couple ways. So if you're using Windows 11, you can right-click the file. So you saw I right-clicked. You can go to copy as path if you have it open that way. And so that's one way you can get a pathway to your file. And so this is the file pathway on your hard drive. And here is the Excel file, and I will show you, if you had it open, you can go to File, Info, and then in any Excel file, you can copy path here, and it will copy the file pathway that you have on your computer here. So I'm going to copy that right now, but I'm going to first take a quick stop and look here at this data file just so you can kind of get oriented to that. So this example data set here for the quarterly report is strictly an export straight out of ZooMonitor. So there's nothing at all different about these columns. If you've used ZooMonitor before and you're familiar with our export, you would certainly recognize and be very familiar with what this export looks like, all of these columns here. And so we have a few session questions here at the end, like things like temperature, observation time, which hippo is on exhibit. I should mention probably that this is a example project. This is a year of our Pygmy Hippo data that you're seeing here. And so, of course, I love our Pygmy Hippos, and of course, I'm going to use our Pygmy Hippos for our example here. And so this is a whole year of data, so quite a few sessions here. So keep that in mind when we go to run it. That'll come back. The only thing that you need to do different when you export your data from ZooMonitor to use this template file is you need to rename the tab to be raw data. And you can see how I have it here, capital R, capital D with a space in between the two words. And then save the file as an Excel file. And so once you did those two things, basically the Excel file here will be completely formatted exactly how the template file wants it to be to read it. You can certainly have the file name, can be anything you want. That's irrelevant. That will get copied in when you copy in that pathway. But you will need to rename the tab here and then save this as an Excel file. Currently out of ZooMonitor, it would be exported as a CSV file. So that's important to note there. Okay, so we have that pathway copied from before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to paste that in. And so you can see the pathway for the XLSX file here. I believe an XLS file would also work as well. And so once you have that in there, just click load and you'll see it'll go through this step here. And so if you did miss that other video I did going through more Power BI background, basically what you're seeing here is the different queries in this Power BI report running. And so that raw data, session details, interval behavior data, each of those in Power BI is called a separate query, which is basically a series of steps that run to calculate the data being used in the report. So that loading that you saw there that was happening, that took a little bit longer than it might for you because that was a whole year of Pygmy Hippo data. So it is very sensitive to the amount of data you're feeding it with that file. So if you do have a data set that has, let's say 3, maybe 4 years of data, do expect it to run a little bit longer. You can see there it was able to calculate in roughly about a minute or so. So it's certainly not a very time constraining process there. But if you have a lot more data, your performance may vary a little bit. And so when the file opens, what you'll first see here is this README tab here in the Power BI report. So let me make this full screen. And so basically this just goes through those steps here that I mentioned just as a reminder of how to set up your file to be used for this template. So you would need it to be saved as an Excel file and then have that tab renamed as raw data. And then I have a few tips here if you're looking to change graph colors or if you want to contact me, how you can go ahead and do that. And so what the quarterly behavior report dashboard is this tab right here. And so you can see basically with that, and that could have been a completely separate file. You can bring the data in and then all of a sudden you could get this dashboard right here. And like I said, you're free to modify this if you want a different graph and you start getting more comfortable with Power BI. Certainly you can go ahead and use the data, use the queries over here and start creating some new visuals. And so just to kind of give an overview of what you're seeing here, there's a first row here that has some slicers on this report here. So you can see we have the interval channel name here. So in this project, the channel we're looking at is interval behaviors. And I should mention that these template files do look at one channel specifically, one channel only. And that's because, of course, in ZooMonitor, it's extremely dynamic, it's extremely flexible. You can create very different looking projects from another institution or another project. And so that's important to kind of narrow down the scope. So you are just visualizing one channel at a time. And for our pygmy hippos here, we actually have a few channels. So we have this interval behavior here. And then we also have another one, which we call height, but really it's sort of a substrate channel that we use. And I'll show that in a second. We have this year quarter here. So you can see the different quarters. So this data was from 2019. And you can see each of the quarters listed here. And then another slicer here, of course, for our focal individuals here on the project. And so for us, we have our amazing Annie, and then also our male Howie. And then for the graphs, this first graph here is just a breakdown of the number of sessions for the selected quarter. So right now it's showing all the quarters, but let's say we wanted to look at Q1 in 2019. You can see that's changing some of the graphs. So if I clear that, and if you ever need to clear any of the slicers, it's you hover over this little eraser icon and you see it clears selections. So you see the numbers change slightly there, not much. We tend to keep a pretty balanced observation throughout the year for the both of them. And then the second graph here is looking at a quarterly time budget for each quarter. So this is Q1, Q2, 3, and 4. If your data had a wider range, you would see a lot more columns here. So this is every quarter in your data set. And this is obviously a stacked column chart here showing that. And then down here in the left is just your standard activity budget for the selected quarter. So the quarter you've chosen up here, Q1, that's what you're seeing here. And then an hourly time budget for that selected quarter here. And so this is a little bit different way to maybe visualize it than maybe you've done before, but this is obviously using a stack column chart, and you can sort of look kind of as the bands move throughout the time. And so this would be 7 a.m. up to 4 p.m. here throughout the day, how the behavior changes across the day. And so one of the things you can, of course, just even start seeing here, seeing some of these patterns, like for instance, our animal not visible, which if you click, you can see it'll highlight animal not visible. You can see it kind of increases later in the day, a little higher in the morning, and less in the middle of the day. And another behavior here, we do see obviously increases a lot more in the day. If you hover over it, you can see that that's sitting lying behavior. So spending more time sitting lying in the middle of the day, a little bit more, a little less visible later in the day. So just, from a quick look at this graph, you can see some of those patterns jumping out. And so this tab here you can see is our interval data tab. We don't have continuous data on this project. So if I click that, you're going to see it's going to be blank. And so if you have a project that just has continuous and doesn't have interval, you would see, blank graphs in your interval data tab there. And then for the all occurrence tab here, you can see some of the all occurrence rate data that we have on this project. So we have a few different behaviors here that we record, and you can see the same 4 graphs that I just went over previously. And one thing to point out too here is when you bring your data in, it's probably going to default, because this file was saved, with interval behaviors as the channel name here. So when you bring your file in for the first time, you might not see graphs showing up here. And so what you're going to need to do is go click this drop down, and then your channels on your project should be showing up here. And so click your channels on your project. And once you save that file, the height and the interval behaviors that you see here, those shouldn't appear anymore. So if you do see that happen, you just basically need to select your channel here with the slicer. And so I can quickly just show the height one as well here. So I can click that, and you can see now we're looking at a couple different behaviors. So this is land, partially submerged, and submerged, how they use the land and obviously the water space there for our 2 individuals. And of course, we have more slicers here. So if we wanted to look at just Annie, we could certainly do that. And with Power BI, of course, everything is, you can cross filter by selecting, in another graph. So you've seen me do that here a few times. So you can also select Annie there, and we'll filter the graphs for just Annie's data. All right, so that is a quick overview of the quarterly behavior report. So let me jump into now the enrichment report here. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file, or sorry, close this file, and then go ahead and open the enrichment file. Before I open the enrichment file here, what I was going to do is give you a quick overview of the enrichment report instructions. So this one was a little bit more complicated to create. The quarterly behavior report template there that you saw basically works just straight off of any ZooMonitor export. You can bring it in straight out of ZooMonitor. This one is a little bit different because you could obviously be recording enrichment interactions and availability in many different ways in ZooMonitor. Obviously, it's a very flexible software, and so there's lots of different ways you can do it. And so for this report to work, I do have a specific workflow that you would need to do to set up your project. But what I wanted to do is I really wanted to make it so that you could be using an ongoing monitoring project that you're already recording data, and you could just add a few behaviors to it. And so that's what I did here with this project. It's not really creating a whole new project just around enrichment monitoring here. You could certainly do that, and you could create a very custom report in Power BI, don't get me wrong. But I did want this to kind of work more easily with ongoing projects that you already have in ZooMonitor. And so to use this report, you will need to add 2 all-occurrence behaviors to your project. And so those 2 behaviors here you can see listed in the instructions are enrichment available and enrichment interaction. And so once you add these 2 behaviors and the modifiers, which I'll get into in a second, that is what the Power BI report template needs to basically pull out all that enrichment information. So that's how you'll record enrichment data here in this project. And so going through each of these behaviors really quick, enrichment available is just an all occurrence behavior you're going to add to your project, and then you're going to include modifiers here. And so you can see in the screenshot here, enrichment available, and you can see some modifiers here. And the modifiers are the list of items or experiences that you're looking to record. And so, of course, these are the enrichment things that you're doing. And then the other one here, enrichment interaction, that's a little bit different. And so that one is not so much recording what's available. So the enrichment available, you'll record that at the start of the session. So the session starts, you'll score enrichment available, and you'll document that stuff. And so that way, in your exported data, it'll always know for that day, for that session, this is what was available. Obviously, the enrichment interaction is a little bit more complicated. And so with the enrichment interaction, you will have to create 3 modifiers for that behavior. That first modifier being that list that you just had here. So this list of enrichment items or experiences that you're looking at. And so, and you want to make sure that it's spelled the same as you have it here, because of course in Power BI, it's going to be looking for that same exact label here that's listed. So it's probably best just to copy and paste your CSV list, your comma separated list of experiences or items here, and just paste that straight in when you're creating that enrichment interaction behavior. And so that's your first modifier. Your second modifier that you're going to create is the list of behaviors. So your ethogram, the list of enrichment related behaviors that you might expect the animal to do, the interactions. And then the third modifier that you would create on that behavior, the enrichment interaction behavior, is whether the behavior that was elicited was a goal behavior or not. And that's completely optional. If you don't use goal behaviors in your enrichment evaluation, you certainly don't need to use that. It won't show up obviously in the reports, but if you do later end up adding like this behavior occurred and this was what we determined was a goal behavior for that enrichment item, you can start adding that in, you can start recording it at that point. So certainly some flexibility there as your enrichment program evolves. And so that's just kind of a background on how to set up for this project. So let me go ahead and close that, and I will open up the file here just to give you a look at that. And so this is obviously a much smaller snippet of data. So this is sort of a fake data set here. This enrichment data set is what is available in the resource library as well. And so you can see we just have a few sessions here. And this data that you see here, again, just like the other one, is strictly straight out of ZooMonitor. So no changes happening to the export. So you can copy and paste your data in here with your column headers. The one thing you will need to do, just like with the quarterly behavior report, is you will need to save it, of course, as an Excel file, and you will need to rename this tab raw data. So that's the tab that Power BI is looking for when it looks in this Excel file. That's the tab that it expects the data to be in. So same sort of thing, capital R, capital D, and have a space between the two words there. And so let me go ahead and copy the file pathway here. So I have the pathway now copied for our enrichment data. And so I'm going to open up our template. And so our newest versions of the template, you can see here for both of those are version 1.1, and both of those are now available in the resource library. And that's definitely the best place to check for the most up-to-date versions. As I come across bugs or as I add new features, that's where I'm going to be keeping the most up-to-date version of these files. So I went and pasted it in there. And this one you'll see will run a lot quicker than the other one. Of course, the other template file that we were using previously was a whole year of our Pygmy Hippo data. And we have our volunteers at Lincoln Park recording data pretty continuously throughout the year, so getting multiple sessions a day. This is obviously just a few example sessions here. And so this, just like the other template file, it'll open here to this README page and has at the top instructions on how you would set up your file, how you would set up the project for this one, make some of those tweaks there. And then for the enrichment evaluation report, and so this is, of course, the data that you'd be supplying it here, you can see this is our dashboard here. And so similar to the quarterly behavior report template, there is this row up here of our slicers. So we have our date, our focal name, enrichment item, and behavior name. So quite a few different ways you can slice the graphs down here. And then here up in the top left, it's kind of an interesting little one. So this is actually using some automated narratives and smart narratives in Power BI. And so it's actually giving you the enrichment item with the most interactions was tub. And so if you had a different data set or a different, of course, different enrichment item names, it would have obviously a different value here. So this is a dynamic text value here that would show up based on your data. And same for the second line, enrichment elicited the goal behavior for 85% of interaction. So a really good way to get some of that really important information out very quickly here. Of course, if you're not using goal behaviors, that won't show up there. That'll be blank. And then these two graphs here. So these are kind of meant to be viewed alongside one another here, like they are. So this left one here is the number of sessions enrichment was provided. And so you can see for our example data set, we have some different enrichment items listed here. And you can see we were providing the mirror enrichment item the most. And so this is the number of sessions. So if you hover over it, you'll see it'll give you a pop-up there and it'll say 15. You can see the count of enrichment there was 15. That's the number of sessions that this was recorded for or provided, sorry. And then on this other one, this sort of complementary graph you can see here, this is the number of interactions by enrichment item. And so ideally, you would want that the items that animals are interacting most with, or the experiences that they're interacting most with and engaging with, are the ones that you're providing the most. And that's really where you would want to see kind of, if you're providing the mirror the most, ideally you would want to see the animals interacting with that mirror enrichment item the most here. And so you can see a little bit of a disconnect that we're providing, they're interacting most with the tub, that's what we listed up here, but that's actually not one of the items that we're providing the most. And of course, this is just a complete example data here. You can look at the total percent here of goal behavior interactions. So how many were to the goal behavior and how many were not to the goal behavior of those interactions. So you can see in this example, we had 85% of our enrichment interactions were to the goal and 15% were not. And so this number here, you can see is also the same number that you're going to have over here as well. And then you can look at goal behavior interactions by individual. And so this is for our two pygmy hippos, Annie and Pogo. So in the previous data set, I said our male was Howie. Our previous male was Howie. Our new pygmy hippo male is Pogo. And so you can see this data set here is using our new pygmy hippo male Pogo, but Annie is of course still there. And this bottom graph here is basically just showing you the interactions by all of the different items for Annie and for Pogo, for our two individuals on this project, just to give you a quick overview of any of those individual differences, since this is really kind of by group here. And so this is just a really easy way that you can just add a few behaviors to your project and then have, rich dashboards that you can visualize, visualize the data coming out of ZooMonitor very easily using Microsoft Power BI. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked that video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to be notified when we release more videos. If you have any questions about ZooMonitor, you can always feel free to contact us at ZooMonitor@lpzoo.org. Thanks.